In this video, we are going to be breaking down the wild card round and seeing who's advancing and what the divisional round bracket is going to be. I'm not going to predict the divisional round bracket, but I want to see what I think that we could be dealing with. And first of all, we have the Cleveland Browns versus the Houston Texans. This is the first postseason meeting between the teams in the regular season. The Browns defeated the Texans at home 36-22. The Browns defeated the Texans very recently in Texas. It was not a good game for the Houston Texans. As you can see, Cleveland got a lead that they never relinquished, and that game wasn't even as close as it sounds because Cleveland had a 36-7 lead. So those touchdowns were mostly in garbage time, except in rushing yards. Cleveland outgained Houston in pretty much every single category. So you have that goes, against Houston as well. And honestly, it was just a horrible game for the Texans. And looking at the Browns, they've been consistent all year with Joe Flacco. CJ Stroud hasn't actually been as consistent with the Houston Texans. And there were times where the Texans did not look like a team that was going to be going to the postseason. The Browns, ever since they, beat the 49ers, it was always like they were going to be going to the postseason, like ever since they beat the 49ers in week 6. Whereas the Texans, they've been a bit more inconsistent. And for that reason, that's why I'm going to have the Browns win this game. They also have a better record. The Browns will be, heading into this game with a better record, even though they're the lowest seed. The Cleveland Browns finished off the season at 11-6, whereas the Texans finished off the season at 10-7, and the Browns, the Cleveland Browns, they honestly rested their stars in Week 18. They could have easily been 12-5. Dolphins versus Chiefs. Dolphins didn't win all 3 previous matchups, but I see the Chiefs winning this one. The Chiefs defeated the Dolphins in 21-14 in Germany, and the Dolphins have beaten exactly one team over 500. And when I say 500, I mean over 500 when they played them. Because obviously, that is a tough comparison. The Dolphins' only win with a team over 500 is the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys themselves have only beaten 2 teams over 500, the Eagles and Lions, both in their stadium, because remember, the Dallas went undefeated at home. And it was a pretty close game between the two of them as well. And this is the Dolphins' only win with a team over 500. Honestly, they'd be seen as kind of frauds even if they were the 2 seed, although going up against the Buffalo Bills after they just beat them in Miami, I think they would have gotten it. But being demoted to the 6th seed really hurts their playoff chances. Then you have Steelers versus Bills. Yes, the Steelers won the first matchup, but it's being played in Buffalo. Buffalo's been a resurgent team, whereas the Steelers have been, more shaky. If you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, you can see that the Steelers, yes, they won their last 3 games, but they lost the 3 before that. 2 of them against very weak teams. Cardinals and Patriots are 2 of the worst teams. You look at the Bills, and they've been consistent out of their bye. They were 6-6 after their loss to the Eagles, and it seems that, unfortunately, both teams changed trajectory. And I'm happy that the Bills are able to get back into the postseason after 5 consecutive wins. But the Eagles also went in a negative direction, losing 5 out of their next 6. In the NFC, you have Packers-Cowboys. This is a tough game in a rivalry. They're tied 4-4. The most recent game was the 2016 NFC Divisional, which the Cowboys lost. The Cowboys have not made it past the divisional round since 1995, and that works against them in any comparison. That being said, the Packers are a weak team. They just squeezed out their playoff berth. I will say the Packers are somewhat strong because you look at their games and they won their last 3, but they barely beat the Panthers. They lost 2 of the ones before that. Then they yes, they won 3 in a row, but they were a very iffy team all season. Whereas the Cowboys have been more consistent, even if they lost two teams to AFC East teams. Rams Lions, you have again two strong teams. Yes, the Lions lost to the Cowboys, but again, with that referee stuff, we'll never have a clean outcome. We'll also never cleanly know who won the NFC East, because if that game really did taint it and gave the Cowboys control of their own destiny, well, the Eagles, we don't know if they would have won that game if they could have still won the East. They might have, because we rested our starters and took a more passive approach to this game. So you have that. The Lions, of course, they won 31-21. When they met, this is also going to be the first one between Stafford and Goff. And obviously the Matthew Stafford trade. Eagles versus Buccaneers. You have the Buccaneers who won 3 of the previous 5 meetings, including 2021 NFC wildcard game, but that was also in Tampa, but that was a 2 versus a 7. The Eagles had the best victory all season versus the Buccaneers. And while we might be limping into the playoffs, same for the Buccaneers. It might be hard to think that. The Buccaneers won 5 out of their last 6, but they barely beat the Panthers, a 2-15 team that's also the worst team in football. Yes, it was a shutout, but much like the Chargers shutout over the Patriots, it doesn't really mean that much with you barely beating a team that poor. It really doesn't. They lost to the Saints. The Jaguars were a team that collapsed really hard. They were like the one team that collapsed harder than the Eagles. Yes, they beat the Packers, and that was impressive. Yes, they beat the Falcons, but again, both of the victories of the Panthers were close. So, yes, Bucks might have had this amazing run, but it could come crashing down on them. So I think that's why the 2023-24 NFL playoffs go in the first round. I think we're going to see the Browns. We're going to see the Browns beat the Texans. I think that the Bills are going to beat the Steelers, and I think that the Chiefs are going to beat the Dolphins. As far as the NFC side of it goes, I think that the Cowboys are still going to beat the Packers. Rams, Lions, that's tough. They didn't play all season either. They did not play all season either. I think that we're going to see Detroit win this game, even though they haven't won a postseason game since the 1990s. They also won the division since the 1990s, and look at them now. Finally, Bucks-Eagles is probably the toughest game to predict, personally, because there's so many unknown factors here. It's unknown if the Eagles players who got injured were playing. That's why we tried to rest our starters to avoid this, but we couldn't rest enough of them. Honestly, I'm up in the air between that one, but just so you know, based on predictions, the winner of that game has to play the 49ers anyway, whereas in this case, you have Browns-Ravens.